Hello, welcome to Tech Dictated, and today we are working on a max grader system. So basically you're given a grading system. This is our grading system, the normal Kenyan way. Then you're asked, write a program that calculates the mean grade of students and comment on how they have performed, e.g. if a student has an A, say excellent work. So the process is you enter the number of students, then you enter the number of subjects, and then for each student you enter the number of subjects. You enter the subjects, actually the grades, that is, which are the marks, of course. Then you calculate the mean grade. Okay, the mean is subjects, all the subjects added together, divide by the number of subjects. Then we rank the student if he or she has an A, B, C, D, E, or an E, which is F in this case, and then give a remark on the performance. So the instructions are: use appropriate naming of variables and the appropriate data types, use any appropriate type of loops where necessary, and give remarks using a switch statement. Yeah, so we're going to get started. So today we will be focusing majorly on the loop. Actually, we're going to use nested loops, so we will be learning about nested loops, applying it practically, and also learning about the switch statement and applying it practically. Yeah, in C++. So let's get started. First of all, we've been asked to enter the number of students and also the number of subjects. Okay, so let's start with that. All students have the same number of subjects in this case. So let's first, of course, we need hash include, because you're entering things and outputting or printing, we need the IO stream. Then we need, of course, our int main, that is the main function. I've talked about functions. We actually worked on a project in the previous tutorial, and so today I won't talk much about it. Yeah, so then we go, first we have to enter the number of students and then enter the number of subjects. So for it to be clear, for the information to be communicated clearly, we need to do this cout, so that the person who is entering data knows what they're entering data for, or what data is supposed to be entered. So cout, we can start with enter. Okay, let me just use the short form here. Okay, I'm gonna just say it that way. Then we can do it this way so that it looks better. Okay, then let's go to a new line. That's a new line. Instead of using end line, which is end L, we can just use that when you're just writing a string. Yeah, then let's declare our integer. This is where we're going to store the number of students, and then now let's ask the user to enter the number of students. Okay, let's give the user the opportunity to enter. Let me just put it that way. Cin, which is where the user will enter the data, and to which variable is it stored? In students. So that's that. Then we do the same for, we do the same, Control V to paste. Then we do the same for subjects. So we want to know the subjects. Here we write subjects, and then here we also have subjects. Yeah, so once you've done that, what follows is, now we want for every student, yeah, the question says for each student enter the subjects, then calculate the mean grade. So per student I will enter the subjects, calculate the mean grade, rank that student, and then go to the next student. So we realize here we have a loop. First, for every student we have to enter all these details. Okay, so this is one loop. Then it's not one subject, it may be 5 subjects. So we have a loop here whereby it's looping to get all the entries of the subjects. So we have a nested loop, which means a loop, this loop for the subjects inside this other loop. Okay, so we have a nested loop. So that's nice. So let's now apply that in our code. So what I've said is we have a for loop. Okay, this is a for loop. That is, in a for loop we have int, and then we have we initialize it to 0, right? Then we say I less than. What are we calculating? The students. While the number of students, we've not reached the end of the students, the student records, we still want to enter data, right? But we want to enter some data, not just one thing. We want to enter multiple subjects for each student. Therefore, we need another loop. We can actually just use a for loop again or a while loop. It will work the same way. Int I, now we can use j, because these are the commonly used variables for loops. Then we can say j, oh sorry, I forgot something here. We need to increment, otherwise it will loop forever, or in this case it won't even work because it won't be complete. J less than the number of subjects, right? We need to keep increasing this value until we get all the subjects. And also, while doing this, since we are not storing this data, we should also at the same time, while the user enters a subject, we need to calculate the total. So we are adding it to the sum total, adding it to the sum total, and a new subject is entered, add it to the sum total, so that by the end of it, you have all the subjects added up together. I hope that makes sense, but let's just implement it. So once we have this, first of all, let me just start by mentioning here, so that also again the user knows what's supposed to happen. Let's do this std cout and tell the user what they're supposed to do. Enter. We can just say enter student name, right? Or enter, do we need the student name? Yeah, we can just have a student name just for fun. Enter student name. Then we have int, of course name it appropriately. Student, can say student name. And then, oh, it's not an integer, sorry. We've not talked about strings as much, but I will use a string here. So for the string, we will use the std, and like other data types, this we will use it that way. Then have that there. Then now let's get data from the user. Std cin student. Okay, student name. Okay, so once we've done that, remember this will only take one name. In the previous tutorial I mentioned get line instead of cin. If you want to get, like if it's a double name, you can use get line to get the whole line, but this will only get until we have this spacing. If we have a spacing between the words, then it will just get the first word. So I will leave it at that, but you can check the previous tutorial where we used get line. Then after you've entered the student's name, let me also request for, let me tell them now what action is happening next, which is enter subject marks. Okay, so since we have been writing in small letters, this will also have to be small so that it's just uniform and looks good. Yeah, so I don't have to do anything here since we are not entering the marks right now, but since we need, first of all, yeah, but since we need, let me just make this to be a new line. Then I also talked about the total marks. Yeah. Now, why I'm doing this, why I'm putting the total marks here, I'm initializing it outside this loop because I will want to use it after this loop is completely, after we are out of this loop. Let me just use that word. So once we've entered all the marks, out here is where we're going to do mean grade and calculations and finding the ranking and all that. So that's why this total marks has to be declared or defined outside this loop. Otherwise it will not only work in this loop, and we want to use it here. So that's that. Now let's go to entering the marks. For it to look good, I can do something like this, so that even the user knows how many marks they have entered. So far, we can say J plus 1, because J starts from 0, so you can't have 0, 1, 2, 3. We want to say if you entered, for example, a student will have 3 subjects, the first subject will be labeled 1, the second subject 2, the third subject 3. You'll just see that as I will show you when I build and run this code. Yeah, so we will have the first subject that way, the second subject. Yeah, so this will be 1 dot, enter the first mark, goes to the next line, 2 dot, enter the second mark, and so on. Yeah, so after that we need to now get the marks from the user. Yeah, get marks, then we have std cin, and we need marks. Okay, yeah, you can be testing while you write your code. I think I should actually be testing, but anyway, let me just run it. Let's see what happens. Yeah, this is a for loop, so I'm not scared because already my I++, J++ are already here. So let me run it, see if we get an error. Okay, it seems it's compiling well. Okay, it has not, so we have a problem here. We need that. Where else do we have a problem? Student name was not. First, let me also add this total marks, so that does not bring an error. Total marks. Now this will be like is equal to, okay, we can just write it first this way, is equal to total marks plus marks. Okay, but in a shorter way we can remove all this and just say plus is equal to. Okay, so that's the same as what I had written before. Then we have an error here. Oh, I think it's because there was no semicolon here, so that's why it was bringing an error also on the next line. Let's see if it will work well right now, because yeah, it has been declared. Let's see, should work. Okay, yeah, it works. So enter the number of students. We have, let's say, 2 students. Enter the number of subjects, let's say 5 subjects. Enter student name. My first student will be, can just use my name. Then now you see, this is what I was talking about. Okay, when I said it will label it for you J plus 1, meaning sorry, this is not the one, meaning that 1, J is 0, so 0 plus 1, this will be 1. So that's basically that. So then we can now, first mark 50, second mark 80, third mark 90, 40, 70. So enter the second student. Okay, so this is one loop, right? Then the second loop starts here. So this is the inner loop, whereby we are entering all the subjects. Then the outer loop, whereby we are entering student by student, student by student. So I hope it's making sense. This is nested loops. Okay, let's proceed now. That's a nested loop we've just been working on. Now we come out here. After you've entered all the marks for one student, we don't want to leave the loop completely. We just want to remain inside the loop, inside this second loop, that is for this same student, and we want to do a few things. So first, let's get the average, then we will generate the grade, and then we will use a switch statement to grade. Okay, so let's get to that. So int, let's say average, yeah, then is equal to total marks divide by the number of subjects that we obtained here. Okay, Then after we've gotten that, let's output the average, right? We can output the average or not. Let's first get the grade. Yeah, let's first get the grade, then output the average and output the grade at the same time. So let's have our grading is A, B, C, D. So those are characters. That's why we're using char instead of string or int or anything else. We're just using char because they're characters. Now, grade. We can stay without initializing it since you're going to use it right now here. If, now we have statements. We have something called if statements. That's what we're going to use for this part, whereby we say A is greater than or equal to 70. B is greater than or equal to 60. So that's an if statement. If A is greater than or equal to 70, do this. Else, if B is, okay, not A, it will be now your grade. Here we will be replacing with your grade. Then we are comparing, and then we are saying let's say if your average is greater than or equal to 70, grade is A, right? So that's how we're going to do it. Now let's come back to our code. Now, as I've said, if average, okay, your average is greater than or equal to 70, what do you have? Your grade is, remember, when we're using characters or char, we use the single quotes, so your grade is A. Okay, and it will leave after it has gotten where you belong. Sorry, this should be equal to. After it has gotten where you belong, it will leave the if statements. It won't continue to the else. So then, else, I'll just copy this first. Then else, if your grade is greater than 60, you have a B, right? Let's copy this again. Let me just copy till the end first, then we proceed. A, B, C, D, and E. Then the E, it's just an else because we don't have any further details to give. So you can just say else your grade is F. Okay. Then this will be D, and your grade is 40 in that case. If your grade is greater than or equal to 50, then you have a C. Yeah, so that's it. So an if statement, basically it just works as it says. If average is greater than or equal to, so whenever you have a condition you want to satisfy, can you say really? Yeah, it's a conditional statement. So whenever you have a certain condition and it's not looping, it's just a condition you want to do to satisfy. If average is greater than or equal to 70, do this. Okay, yeah, so whenever you want true, you use an if statement. So if average is greater than or equal to 70, it will do this. If we did not have this else here, then nothing will happen if the grade is not greater than 70. It will just go past this if statement. Okay, yeah, so that's that for if statements. Now let's proceed to switch. Okay, before that, let's now output the grade and average and then proceed to switch. So std average, then we can end line, then std we can say what's the name of the student. We can start with the name of the student, so the student name, Then we proceed to, sorry, it should be facing this way. We proceed to the your grade is, then we output the grade, and then we end the line, and then now we proceed to the switch statement. Now the switch statement works this way. First we say, what are we looking at? What is the So the switch statement allows us to test a variable for equality to a certain value in a list of values. So basically, a switch statement allows a variable to be tested for equality against a list of values. So for example, in our case, the variable we are testing is grade, and we want to see if it's either equal to A or B or C or D or F. And by equal to, in this case, we are meaning assignment. We are meaning, is grade assigned A, or grade assigned B, or grade assigned C, and the like. So in this case here, we say, what's the variable? Our variable for now is grade. And then now, what is this list of values that we are searching or we are checking against? First we have, so you have the case. This case is what represents these values, okay, list of values. The first one will be A. Remember, it's a string, so we have those. So that's our first one. If it's A, okay, it works almost the same way with an if statement. So we've switched to grade, and now we are checking if grade is A, okay. Now, if grade is A, what do we want to do? Let's tell the student a remark. And then we end the line. Close that, and we end that line. And then now, after you've gotten to your switch and you've done what you want to do, if the case, for example, is A, then we get out of the switch statement. This will break from the switch, okay. It breaks from loops, and in this case we're breaking from the switch. So it will not continue checking, it will just exit. Let me use that word, it will exit from the switch statement, okay. So we can do the same for all A, B, C, D, and F. Still the same thing. So we have A, B, C, D, and lastly F. So if you have a B, what do we say? If you have a C, if you have a D, if you have an F, okay, so sorry, these ones are all wrong. It should be facing out. Okay, okay, yeah, nice, just as this is facing. Okay, now once you've done that, I think that's the end of our assignment. Let's now so it was still running, it seems, so let's run this again, build and run it again. So enter the number of students. We have 10, no, let's say 2, 5 names of the students. I will use my name. Oh, sorry. I actually did not even notice. Yeah, so your average score is, this is not right, so let's check this. Let's check that. Let's initialize total marks to 0. I think that's as a result of not initializing the total mark to 0, because for variables inside functions, they just get allocated any mark depending on what was there in the previous, in that location previously. Okay, since a variable is a storage location, and so whatever was on that storage location gets allocated to whatever comes in instead of being deleted, because it may be expensive on time. But anyway, that's a story for a different day. So let's run this. Let's do it again and see. 5, enter the number of subjects, 5, student name, doesn't really matter, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so now it works well since I initialized the variable to 0. Okay, I initialized this total marks variable to 0, and so it works well. So your mean grade is B because this person had a 66. Let's try with another student. Then we can see no, 63 again. B, great job, well done. Let's try with one last student, for example that. Then we have a 70. Let's say this person just decides to flunk. 38F. Let's do this again next semester. Okay, so you can keep doing that, but basically we've proven the concept. We see everything works well, and we've worked with different things, including if statements, switch statements, and the loops, nested for loop. Yeah, so that's that for today. I think we will leave it at that. Loops are also called iteration. It's just one word or the other. So yeah, I think that's it for today. If you have any questions, please tell me so that I can address them. Goodbye.